Ada was born in 1898 on Alaska's Seward Peninsula, in a native settlement where weather wasn't background scenery. It was the boss. Wind could flay your skin, snow could erase trails, and one little mistake could mean you paid with fingers, or worse. Her father died when she was still a child, and after that her mother sent Ada and her sister to Nome to be raised by Methodist missionaries, trading one kind of hardship for a different kind of chance. There, Ada learned English, how to read and write, and the household skills that made a girl useful in a white town: cooking, cleaning, washing. What she didn't learn were the ancient, brutal skills you need to live off that land: hunting, trapping, reading ice, building a shelter that won't get you killed. The missionaries did give her something else, though: sewing. In the Arctic, a seam isn't just decoration, it's survival. Ada got damn good at turning skins into clothing that kept heat in and cold out. She could make boots and parkas that might keep a body from freezing. That skill would matter more than anyone guessed. At 16, she married Jack Blackjack, a hunter and dog sled driver. It was a violent marriage. He beat her, starved her, and eventually walked out. Ada had 3 kids. 2 died. And the one who survived, Bennett, was sick with tuberculosis, a slow, cruel disease that tightened its grip year after year. After Jack left, Ada lugged the boy back to Nome when his legs failed. She carried him. She scrubbed floors, sewed for miners, and scraped by until she realized she couldn't afford Bennett's care. She put him in the Jesse Lee Home for Children, the same church-run world that had raised her, promising it would be temporary. That promise is everything when you don't have options. Then, in 1921, hunger was always close, and Bennett was still waiting. Ada heard about an Arctic expedition looking for a seamstress. The pay? $50 a month. Back then, that was more money than she could imagine earning in Nome. She didn't sign up for glory. She signed up to buy Bennett a future. The expedition was the brainchild of Vilheimer Stevenson, a Manitoba-born explorer who had a way with charm and a way of making the Arctic sound friendly, like he could sell winter to someone who had never worn frost. Stevenson wanted Wrangel, sometimes called Wrangler Island, remote, uninhabited, politically fuzzy, a place he could slap a flag on and call it a British and Canadian outpost. He pitched it as an airbase, a weather and radio station, a hunting ground, an investment. The plan hinged on a single, stupidly simple thing: get people there long enough to plant a flag and claim it. He recruited 4 young men. Alan Crawford, 20, from Toronto, the official leader because he was a British subject. Fred Mao, 28, from Ohio, who'd been north before and knew just how the place could nearly kill you. Milton Gale, 19, from Texas, bouncy, eager to prove himself. And Lauren Knight, 28, from Oregon, someone who'd spent years learning Arctic skills and had survived brutal diets and cold. On paper, that sounded okay. On ice, it's not the same as being ready. Ada wasn't thinking of flags. She was thinking of Bennett's thin chest rising and falling, and the $50 a month that could buy medicine. Still, she hesitated. Who wouldn't? She was shy and had a bone-deep fear of wild animals, especially polar bears. Wrangel Island had a reputation for bears. There were facts and there were legends, and in Ada's head they braided together. She was told other native families would join, that she wouldn't be the only woman, that familiar voices would be there. That promise mattered. She distrusted men for good reason. But the men on the dock reassured her. They'd recruit families in Siberia. Ada's need, and maybe a stubborn faith in people's words pushed her on board. She asked for advice and got a grim warning. Yes, you'll sail, but there will be death, knives, fire. She went anyway. On September 9, 1921, a schooner carried Ada and the 4 men out of Nome toward Wrangel Island. They also took a kitten with them, Vic, a ridiculous little mascot that would matter more than anyone expected. The route stopped at East Cape, Siberia, where the men hoped to buy a skin boat, an umiak, and hire Inuit help. Both hopes failed. The boat was too pricey, and the people didn't come. Instead, they bought a heavy wooden dory, a lousy substitute, and kept going, optimism patched over a growing list of holes. Storms thrashed the ship. Wind tore gear, soaked clothing, beat on bare hands. At one point, a boat they'd managed to buy was blown away, further draining their supplies. When Wrangel Island finally rose out of the Arctic haze in mid-September, it looked like a sentence, not an opportunity. They landed, raised a flag claiming it for Britain, and watched their ship pull away. Ada felt 2 things at once. Part of her wanted to run after that retreating vessel. Part of her knew she'd crossed a line you can't uncross. They set to building camp. Wrangel had no trees, but it did have driftwood, enough to build and enough to burn. The men put up tents and started framing a witter house against a hillside. Logs, walls to be later reinforced with snow blocks, a sod-insulated roof. A wood-burning stove would be the heart. Inside, they set up tents within the frame for extra warmth. Ada's sleeping space doubled as the kitchen. The men's area was larger. Even out there, lines were drawn. At first, it felt almost normal. Alan unpacked instruments and books and started documenting geology and wildlife. The men took hikes, trapped foxes, tried to hunt, though their firearm skill was hit or miss. Ada worked constantly, cooking, cleaning, mending, sewing garments from skins, scraping hides. At night there were small comforts. Alan's bad jokes, Lauren's poems, Ada singing hymns, Milton tapping on a typewriter, and Vic, the kitten, weaving between their legs. But isolation makes its own weather. Ada's homesickness morphed into something heavier. She cried a lot, thinking about Bennett until the thought actually hurt. She became anxious, sometimes erratic. The men, young, restless, light on compassion, didn't understand. They teased her, distrusted her. Once, when she refused to patch a pair of boots, Lauren tied her to a flagpole until she agreed. Not discipline, humiliation. A demonstration of power that told Ada exactly where she stood. Polar bears haunted their nights. Every so often, a bear would come close enough that the boundary between camp and wilderness disappeared. One night, while the men were out, Ada heard heavy footsteps and snuffles just outside her tent, the ominous sounds of a predator sizing you up. The fire died and cold seeped into everything. She lay there frozen until Milton arrived and shot the bear. He found her huddled, exhausted, and petrified. Winter tightened, and the stores dwindled faster than they'd planned. The men had been confident they could supplement by hunting. Sometimes they did. Often they didn't. Darkness settled for months, and the human mind, not built for endless night, began to fray. Then the first outside betrayal. The relief ship didn't arrive in 1922. Stevenson had promised a schooner, the Teddy Bear, to bring supplies, reinforcements, letters, fresh food, proof that life existed beyond the horizon. The ship tried and failed, turned back by ice. By mid-September, the camp knew there would be no rescue. The blow landed like a physical hit. Their 6 months of groceries were gone, and they'd have to live entirely on what they could kill. Winter 1922 to 1923 wasn't just cold. It was subtractive. It stripped comforts, coffee, tobacco, potatoes, first, then strength. Scurvy began to show its face. Scurvy isn't romantic. It dismantles you slowly. Swollen gums, loose teeth, aching joints, weird bruises, constant exhaustion. The cure, fresh vegetables or citrus, was impossible on Wrangel. The practical defense was raw meat. Blood and organs carry some vitamin C. They moved camp hunting for driftwood and fuel and stared at maps looking for a route to Siberia to reach a wireless station. The plan was enormous and dangerous. Cross unstable ice, travel hundreds of miles. But starvation makes impossible plans feel reasonable. In January 1923, they tried. Sled overloaded, dogs weak, pressure ridges like broken walls, frozen fingers. After 2 brutal weeks, they limped back beaten. A second, colder plan formed. 3 men would go and 2 would stay. Loren Knight was too sick for the trek. Scurvy had gutted him. Ada, terrified of ice and lacking traditional hunting training, was left with him. Practical to the men. Devastating to Ada. She'd had no vote. On January 29, 1923, Alan Crawford, Fred Mao, and Milton Gale left with the sled and dogs. Ada watched until the whites swallowed them. They promised quick return with help. Ada clung to that promise because the alternative was an abyss. The day after they left, the wind rose and erased their tracks. Ada and Loren rationed the remaining bread, 6 tiny pieces a day, and waited for birds and seals. Trapping takes patience and luck. The survival of the pair depended on meat and increasingly on Ada. Loren's condition plunged. He'd faint while chopping wood. She'd drag him back thinking he was dead. He was frightened, and the book he consulted for scurvy symptoms only confirmed the obvious. Lemon juice and vegetables. Things they couldn't get. Ada took on everything. Hauling fuel, tending the stove, scraping hides, checking traps, all while still afraid to carry a rifle. At first she had a snow knife, a comfort more than a weapon. Hunger pushed her out of the tent, fear pushed her back in. But between the two, she learned. She trapped better, learned to kill quickly, practiced with a rifle until her hands stopped trembling. She shot a bird out of the air cleanly for the first time. A tiny act against the scale of the Arctic, but a huge shift inside her. She was no longer waiting to be rescued by someone else's competence. Spring came like a promise kept grudgingly. Birds returned, eggs were found, light lengthened. Ada gathered, hunted, and stayed watchful. She built a platform above camp to scan for bears and ships. She worked on a boat from wood and skins to hunt seals and walrus for their fat, the kind of dense calories that might save a person through another winter. One attempt lost to wind taught her how quickly the Arctic could erase labor. She rebuilt. No luxury to quit. Loren didn't improve. By June, scurvy and hunger had hollowed him out. Even then, he criticized her. How she skinned hides, how she did things wrong. In late June 1923, Loren Knight died. Ada recorded the date. Facts are what remain when everything else gets stripped away. She couldn't drag his body, so she made a crude grave and built a barrier to keep animals